Welcome, everyone. Our next presenter is Rony Soussan. He is compositing supervisor at EFX, and he is here to talk to you about his work on Teen Wolf done on eyeon's fusion with Maximus platform.
Welcome, everybody. Today I'm just going to talk a bit about how we moved from a traditional 2D to an attempted 3D and then eventually a compositing 3D workflow for eye replacements. So right here is an example really quickly of our R&D platform that we use. And we really actually build the eyes up from all of their materials, from their lenses, the inside lenses, the outside lenses, skin, and the wrapper that goes around it. So the idea is with the GPU and being able to play with these shaders and be able to generate the proper reflections from the plate and the material, we're able to very quickly create life in the eyes as opposed to just taking a photograph and trying to track it in the eyes. The problem is that Teen Wolf is a very fast turnaround, and so we had to find a way to package all of this so that everybody can jump in and start doing the eyes without having to be a 3D wizard. So I'm going to show you an example of how we did that. Let me quickly just give you a very short, quick run-through as examples of some of the type of eye work that we do. So it ranges from the human eye effect, which sometimes is just the ring, and other times it's the complete eye, as you saw in the R&D demo. All right, let me jump right into it now and show you a little bit of how not only do we do it, but how we created a package to let everybody do it. I'm going to start with the Kanema creature. Okay, so we start with a plate that we get, and basically we have to start tracking eyes and putting them into place. So similar to what you just saw, in this particular setup, we have a stereo workflow strictly for creating the individual patterns for the left and right eye that we then split for left eye and right eye so that we have pupil control and things of that nature individually for each eye. The next thing we do is we start applying them to shaders. We start bringing them in, applying shaders like a ward shader so we can get the basic spec. Images used for your reflection sphere, the actual reflection map. And these have amazing capabilities like the ability to face on, glancing on, fall offs, things like that. So you can really start building up your eyeball. And then you combine it with your original material. So what we did is we decided that we were going to render all the eyes facing camera. So what we did is we split the eyes into left eye and into right eye simply by offsetting a single eye that is then each applied to their own set of shaders so that we can control all of them. And they go through a bunch of processes that we have. In this case, this is just the camera and lighting rig that is attached to both left and right eye. And then we have the 2D processes. So once the image gets rendered, it looks like that essentially. So it's basically, and as a matter of fact, let me bring in the presetted one that I made. Kanema. Okay, so the eye essentially, when we're done rendering it, looks like this. And take off the assist. So it's basically, you've got your left eye and you've got your right eye. And then we have a bunch of controls that do things like add shadows to the eyebrows using all these different masks for shadowing and all of these different effects. They're all packaged in and then merged on top. So let me show you what we actually do and how we start the process. The first thing we do is once we have the track in place, we need to start evaluating our track. So the first thing we do is I do the track assist. So the track assist with the eyes on top allow me to see a superimposed version of just crosshairs. I can even use the shape of the canema to make sure that rotations and all of that are in play. So then we have our tracking system, which is 2D tracking points. So basically you create a track for each eye, 4 for the left eye, 4 for the right. However you want to design your tracking, it's individual for each shot because of the individual needs. But in this case, we're able to track them in. And when they start slipping or things like that, it gets really cool because not only do we have an offset position where we might want to modify, say, the starting point of an eye or do a correction, but I've also built in a bunch of controls, like, for example, I would like him to look to the left or look to the right, or I want him to look up or down. I want the eyes to converge down to cross-eyed or infinity. So there are a lot of controls beyond tracking to give the eye life, because that's what it is. It doesn't just move as something pans. The eye sort of catches up with the environment it's trying to look at. It's dilating its pupils. It's doing a bunch of things. So once we've got the track correct, we generally turn off the track assist, and we can do left eye, right eye individually. So I'm going to turn off the track assist, and I'm going to do the eyes inside. So I always have them out at first just to kind of see what's going on with them. Are they the right size, scale, or whatever? And then we begin with our eye control system. And all of these tools are basically driving all of the lighting packages and shading packages that are built into my package, but just allows any user to come in. So for instance, we can adjust the light intensity. We can adjust the ambient light intensity for the left eye and the right eye. We can choose which direction the light is coming from. And this is a lot easier to see when they are actually not on top. So we're able to do a lot of that. Let me just quickly show you one of my presets. So this is a preset that I kind of put together of the different lighting intensities, things like that. So if you get really, really bright, but then the light seems to shift because of its head turning, and we don't want to start animating all the lights and all that kind of stuff, so I built into it bias. So we can even affect the overall effect of any one of these through a light bias. That allows us to manipulate that. We also can do things like, of course, the look left and look right, we talked about before. The specular intensity can now be adjusted here directly without going into the shader. The specular size can be adjusted without going into the shader. So we could basically adjust the shape or intensity or pretty much anything we want without having to go into the 3D system. So the next thing that we want to do, this is fine, you can create a look and whatever, but they're still missing an integration. And one of the ways that we fix that is through these tools over here. So we're going to start with the eyebrow. So when I say do eyebrow or do brow, what I'm actually saying is, and I'll select the mask so you can see, is I'm actually saying turn on the mask for the eyebrow and then start applying the effects that I want to it. So for instance, I could say the left brow size. So we can increase the left brow size and we start looking at it until it starts to penetrate into your image. So you get a good sense of how much that you need. Your right eyebrow size, same thing. If you wanted to rotate it a little, you can to get a little bit of the rotation, the softness. Same thing, bias. Is it more shadow on one side? Is it less shadow on the other side? So here's a setting that I had prepared for here. So now we've got a little shadowing that's happening. Then we have the bridge of the nose, which also generates natural lighting. So the same thing, as soon as we do the nose bridge, we have another similar effect where we're now adjusting the nose bridge by, again, doing the same thing. Left size, we take the softness down so you can see it. And the strength of the shadow, and all of that. So if I look at the settings that I've created here, right, and I say do the shadow, so you get to see a little bit more darkening in that little area. And again, the bias, if it was centered, would then be equally distributed against both sides. But now I can just, with a little tweak, affect about 9 different tools, lights, ambient lights, and all these different things with just a single slider. The next thing after that is a tint control. And that allows us to bleed some color through. And I'll exaggerate it in a second just to kind of show you. So if we wanted to bleed some green or some red, or depending on the situation, the anger, or we create a little soft matte, soften it up, and I choose the tint amount. And that just helps bleed some of the colors back in. The way the system works is very simple. We track in the eye matte. So a new user comes in, he gets a new shot, he tracks the eye, he tracks the eye matte. The eye matte then drives all the tools needed, including the tools that darken the inside of the eye. So for instance, if we look at this eye, and I turn this tool off, you'll notice that we lost the subtle shading. So all this is an inverted soft version of the matte of the eye used to create curvature and shade above and beyond what we have with your light. So we'll just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to make that look good. We always have points where we can look at just the eyes. And then we also have points where we could say at any point, I would not like to see, with my eye assist, I do not want to see the left eye, and not the right eye or whatever. So you can work in like parts, and as well as quickly reference the eye on top, so that you can see the overall performance. So this gives you an idea. This is fully rendering right now, and it's, that's as long as it's taking. When we tried to do this in 3D purely, it was just too much pipelining for getting that stuff in, because it doesn't actually work frame to shot. You need to throw in a tracking tool here. You need to be able to say, oh, in this case here, I'm going to throw this little polygon in here with a pole, and I'm going to shade out the pole because he needs some light. It's just a little bit more control. So what we lack in, say, the tool sets that 3D has, we gain in iteration speed. Client stands in front of you, looks at the whole thing. So I'm going to give you an idea what this final one looked like. So as you can see, it's very natural. There's reflections, and when we create shadows with this system, it's not like I'm darkening the reflections. We're also running the shadow system. So if you're going to use, say, use the assistant to create the brow, well, the brow shadow is also driving masks that go up into a system here of switches. And those system of switches basically control things like, for instance, if I say do brow, or if I say do bridge, we gain or lose the mattes needed to also affect the shader. So then these are then taken in as a filter applied to the reflections, to the reflection level, intensity. So now I have a tool to affect occlusion of reflections and shadows, as well as darkening, so it starts to look a lot more natural, and you start to get more of a response of the eye and the gleaming and things like that. The other thing we do too is, on occasion, the reflections aren't really adequate. So yes, it's a closed system, but it's also an open system. So we're going to take our goofy guy and do not put the eyes on top, and let me take off some of this tinting, or I'll just go to my defined prettier level, or don't do tint. What's interesting is that we can define reflection changes in many ways. So for instance, I've put in here a slider that basically say diverge reflections. So basically rotate them across from each other just to make sure that we're not catching something accidentally in there. But for the adventurous people, they can just go right in here to my sphere map and say, well, here's a sphere map. Let me get some more rotations out of this and see if I could see any, better, more interesting, what do you call it? Take the eye directly, and you start to say, all right, let me let me rotate the sphere map. Let me see, we kind of want to get that reflection in there. Let's get that in there right there. You know, and so you can be a little bit more creative, and so basically infusing compositing into the 3D creation, into the shader work, and now you're not sort of tied down to one workflow that says everything's 3D or everything's 2D or everything is whatever. It's an environment that you control. So let me give you an example of how this works on someone that you are more familiar with, which is a human shape. And that would be the hybrid. Right, so in this case, as you see, it's the same setup. So we have a template that works across all shots. And all you do is as you get your new shot that comes in, you track it to get eye establishment position. You set up your roto for the eye, attach them to the same trackers that you had, and then you begin the process of evaluating your shot, right? So eye assist, do eye tracker. And then eyes on top. And as you see in this case, what these switches help do also is bypass branches to help speed up interactive work. So if you say turn off right eye, we omit an entire right side of the processing branch, and then we could just work on one eye and speed things up and things of that nature. So in this case, it was a similar approach, but because he's human, the integration to the skin and all of that is a little bit more important. It's a little bit more important. So if I were to go in here now, and let me go back into these guys, and we set it to like the defaults that come with it. Don't do brow, don't do bridge, and don't do tint. So you can see it's very easy to accidentally have garbage that you really don't know what to do about and can't get it working and all that stuff. And when you have hundreds of shots like these, you can't have hundreds of people who know this tree inside out and are intimate with it, because in our world, there's 20 guys working this week, next week they're at ILM, next week they're here. We have to have a system that you can just bring anyone in and say, here, sit down, here's a bunch of sliders, 3Ds, make this eye beautiful and work it. So this is a very good example of being able to commoditize art, but leaving it open. It's not a macro, nothing is hidden. Everything that is controlled, you have access to. So the other interesting thing that we embedded in here is a light wrapper for the merge. And this is something that I wrote probably or built 7, 8, 9 years ago. It's really outdated, but it serves a lot of purposes. So because the eye is behind, one second. Because the eye is behind the socket, so we're basically cutting a hole in the socket, it allows us to use the light wrapper to do some really cool stuff. For instance, control just automatically whether or not we are going to be producing any wraps, any light, any type of that kind of things built right into the sort of compositing thing. The other thing it offers us too is the ability to do subtle corrections. So for instance, subtle corrections like choosing whether or not these eyes are blended additively or subtractively. So if you're going to do your first light wrap, you could say, well, I actually want the value of it to be subtractive, not additive, because I want the darkness around the lip of the eye and not the brightness. So building it all into that tool sort of helps add just one extra little bit of control. So let me go back and set this to my current settings. So you see how instantly just from those few settings that you can adjust, and that means that you don't really have to be a 3D artist. You don't have to go in here and say, okay, I've got to adjust the lights, the value of these lights, move them away, slide them to get that. If you wanted all of a sudden in here, and we say, let's move the spec a little bit. So we just move the light a little bit, and we can get a spec change. We can increase the intensity, and our light wrap will start working. So I'll go to 50. right? So you can see the light wrap is working. So all these scenes that happen when they get angry and this, we just adjust the lighting and everything sort of responds across the system, as opposed to having to have 1,000 keyframes that the artist has got to be concerned about for glow, for eye, for position, for shader, for light. He's just, where's he looking, and is it bright or dark, and sort of all the other things kind of fall into play. And put the intensity back to say 5 or wherever it was. I don't remember. All right, so when I said it's art, it is art. So in this case, we were looking at the shot, and I said, oh, it needs some help under here. So yeah, you just throw in another tool to take away some of this reflection bleed. I love the reflection, I love everything, but there's too much bleeding in there. So I'll just throw in a little mask, and I'm just going to say just in that mask, just darken that area prior to merging it. And then what I end up with is just a little bit more control than my shaders allow me. I'll just show you it again. It's just very, very subtle. But those little subtle things are shadow, brightness, assist, massive thing. We had some more custom stuff on this one, but here. Right, so this one over here is the one, sorry. So we were getting just too bright under there. So basically decided to make a little mask, that goes under the eyeball. Again, this is the beautiful part about having all the eyes be rendered in a static position, but rotating in the GPU and all that kind of stuff, because then I can infuse things like, I need to fix that a little bit. That needs to get a little brighter because it just works better with this particular material. And as you can see how true that is. And those are the subtle details that we need to worry about when we're actually producing non-demo material. When we actually have to deliver something, you can't create a package system that doesn't allow your artist to continue to expand on that. So let me show you what this particular shot looked like. So the beautiful thing too is that the Fusion trackers are all motion blur ready, and that means that they're not just motion blurring for static, X and Y, but they do curvature and everything. So if the track for the position of the eye includes rotations and all that stuff, it's going to be applied. And because the eye is underneath the hole we're creating, we're not going to have the other eye leaking through the motion blur of the matted eye that you put on top. And we can drive things like the flare that goes over it and all that kind of stuff. Before I actually quit out, I'm going to show you what inspired us to do this. And for me, it all started with a very smart guy named Robert Zelch, who showed me a car paint shader in Fusion. It was my first time. I was like, are you kidding me? That I can do this on the GPU in a composition app? And as soon as I saw that, and I said, oh, wow, so I can control things like how much of the flex material is in there. I can control things like, the base color correction of the car. It's speculative. I mean, it's unbelievable the way this is broken down into its parts. Reflection, how much face-on strength, all that kind of stuff. Glancing, face-on, the fall-off, the amount of bumps, the bump map itself, height scale, things like that. So this inspiration, I said, well, if we could do this, we could do water, we could do eyes, we could do everything. Yesterday we were demonstrating water from Anonymous. All of that water was done as well, same way, full-on feature film, waters, bubbles, foam, everything you would expect a simulation was all done just with some artistry and some GPU time. So hopefully this gave you guys a little bit of insight at the production level, how we're using the GPUs today, and then how we want to use them tomorrow will get even more interesting. So
Thank you, Rony. I have a question for you.
Shoot.
How much time difference has Maximus made for the workflow?
As I said, iteration is everything. So it has made a tremendous amount of difference because we could now do something with 1,000 versions to get it right, where you couldn't do that before. And so the workflow is extremely fast because you can have the director sitting behind you, your client, supervisor, or whatever, and you can dial down some of the qualities everywhere and get real time of anything you want to get feedback. And then when he walks away, you apply it, add your glow, add your extra 2D stuff to it. But having that in your comp app means I don't have to wait 4 or 5 days for him to get to see the 12 versions. So just being able to slide, light, shade. Am I in the right direction? Are we good? He gets off and I know what to do. The traditional method was I would actually have to produce a finished result, ask the 3D department to generate me that material, and then show it, and then do it. So there's increase in speed beyond using the card within this particular application or shot. It's system-wide using GPU. It changes sort of the turnaround workflow and the iteration capabilities that your artists basically have at their disposal. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are out of time, but if you have any questions for Rony, please see him right after his presentation. We'll be starting our next talk in just a few minutes.